Alright, lesson 4, fundamentals automatic transmission description, fundamental of the automatic transmission, condition, give it the information operation drivetrain with the hydraulic system of the automatic transmission. Learning event 1. Discover the operation and drive of the train mechanism of the automatic transmission. The description of automatic transmission, like a manual transmission, matches the load requirement of the vehicle to be the power speed of the range of the engine. This is done automatically depending on the throttle position, vehicle speed of the position, and shift the control level of the automatic transmission is built and modeled with having 2, 3, or 4 forward speeds, and some of the equipped with the overdrive. The operator control limited selection of the rear range of the mounting moving control lever. The coupling automatic transmission coupled with the engine through the control converter. The torque converter is used with the automatic transmission manually because it does not have the manual disengaged by the operator each time the vehicle is stopped. Because of the automatic transmission shifter without any interruption to the engine torque application of the cushion effective with the fluid and coupling with the torque converter is also desired. Shifting because of the automatic transmission shift of the gear ratio independently must be due with the operator with the releasing the throttle. It does use the planetary gears. It does this by using planetary gear sets of elements locked in the relief of the various combinations. Produce required forward reverse gear ratio. The locking of the planet gear set elements done through the use of hydraulically actuated multi-disc clutches and brake bands. These hydraulic pressure actuated locking device control of the valve body. Think of the valve body. Hydraulic computer receiving the signal indicating the vehicle speed, throttle position, gear shift, lever's position based on the information valve body sent to the hydraulic pressure for the correcting locking device to the produce the rear required gear ratio. Operators control only operator control automatic transmission is the gear shifter level through the accelerator pedal that can also be considered the operator control because the transmission shift at lower ratio of what is fully depressed. Drivetrain mechanism, multi-disc clutch. The multi-disc clutch in many cases is used for the transmit torque of the locking elements of the planetary gear set for rotating members with the transmission. In some cases, the multi-disc jack is also used to lock the planetary gear set element transmission case and the active reactionary member. Construction, multi-disc clutch is comprised of the following components. Disc and plate. The active component of the multi-disc clutch, the disc and plate with the disc are made of steel and are faced with friction material. They usually have the teeth cut into the main inner circumference to positively key them to the clutch hub. The plates of the steel with the no facing usually with the teeth cut into the outer circumference of the positively key from the inside of the clutch drum and the inside of the transmission case by alternatively stacking the disc and plate, but they are locked together and released by similarly squeezing them. Clutch drum and hub. Clutch drum holds these stacked over the discs and plates usually attached with the planetary gear set element that is being driven. The clutch hub usually attached with the driving member of the fits inside of the clutch disc and the plates. The pressure plate. Pressure plate with thick clutch plates that are placed at either end of the stack. The purpose to distribute the application pressure equal to the surface of the clutch plate displays. Clutch piston. Clutch piston and hydraulic pressure to apply with the clutch. Hydraulic pressure usually supplied with the clutch piston through the center of the rotating member. The clutch piston seals. The clutch piston seals serve to prevent leakage of the hydraulic pressure around the inner and outer circumference of the clutch piston. Alright, clutch springs. The clutch springs ensure the rapid relief of the clutch with the hydraulic pressure for the clutch piston. The relief of the clutch spring with the form of the servo. Several coil springs equally spaced around the piston with one large coil with a spring with a fits in the center of the clutch drum. Some models of the diaphragm type or Bellyville clutch spring. Operation. Now let's discover the operation multi-disc clutch. The clutch is relieved with no hydraulic pressure for the clutch position of the clutch disc and the plate, free to rotate within each other. The result of the clutch hub. The rotates freely if it does not travel the clutch drum. Clutch is applied with the hydraulic pressure is applied with the clutch piston, which in turn is applied with the pressure of the clutch disc plates, causing them to lock together. The result of the clutch hub drive the clutch drum through the clutch. Your brake band. The brake band is used to lock a planetary gear set element with the transmission cable and the element that can act on the brake reactionary number. Construction. The bracketed base brake band is comprised of the following components. The band. The brake band is a circular piece of spring steel with a rectangular and cross section. It is inside the circumference within line with the friction material. The brake band has bosses on each end that can be held with a compressor. The drum. Drum fits inside of the band and attached to the planetary gear set element that will be locked in the band. Our circumference of the machine smoothly interact with the friction surface of the band by pulling and opening end of the band together. Rotation of the drum stops. Anchor. The anchor firmly attaches the one end of the brake band with the transmission cable. The provision adjusting of the clearance of the band with the drum are easily provided in the anchor. Your servo. Usually the hydraulic pressure squeeze of the band around the drum. The servo piston is acted by the hydraulic pressure from the valve body that is fed through the internal passage through the case. The servo piston is sealed around to prevent leakage of the hydraulic pressure. Spring loaded to allow quickly release of the band. So some servos use hydraulic pressure on both sides of their piston so that they have hydraulic pressure from both release and the application of the band. Operation. The brake band is relieved with the drum. Hydraulic pressure applied with the servo of the drum is free rotate with the band. The brake band is applied with the hydraulic pressure is applied with the servo. The servo is turning the band around the drum. The action result of the drum being locked in stationary position, causing output change of the planetary gear set. Alright, your overrun one-way clutch. The overrun clutching of the contains certain automatic transmission lock with the planetary gear set element with the transmission cable within the active of the reaction. Remember, the operating gear clutch is the same as the one used with the torque converter and can be with the sprague or roller type. There is no control system necessary for the mechanism. Learning event 2. Discover the drive chain and arrangement of the automatic transmission. Automatic transmission are built in 2, 3, 4 speeds. Therefore, many of the variation drivetrain arrangements. The following paragraphs describe the two most popular arrangements for these compound planetary drive gears in the Simpson drivetrain. That shows your typical 2-speed automatic transmission compound planetary drive trains. The arrangement combines the two multiple disc clutches, one brake band with a compound planetary gear set. Compound planetary gear set is really two gears of sets integrated together through the use of long and short pinions. With the compactness of these units supersede the earlier 2-speed drive chains with the 2 separate planetary gear sets. For your operation, the compound planetary drive train provides 2 4-speeds to reverse and neutral for power flow. The differential gears are arranged as follows. Stator roller clutch turbine, plumb input shaft, stator shunt, low band off, power forward clutch off, reverse ring gear, slow sun gear, long pinion, short pinion, reverse clutch, planet carrier, input sun gear, output shaft. Neutral. The gear shift lever is placed with the neutral of the clutch and the brake bands are relieved with the cover. There is no reactionary number. The planetary gear set is provided in positive drive. Therefore, no torque is transmitted to the output shaft of the planetary gear elements from free to spin around the axes. Low. When the gear shaft lever is placed in low and the direct reversal, the clutches are relieved with the low brake band is supplied with locking of the low sun gear. Power flow for the drivetrain is flows from the input sun gear to the long planetary pinions. From the long planetary pinions to short planetary pinions. Lock sun gear provides a reaction point with the planetary pinions carrier. It can also walk around it and rotating the output shaft. Result speed reduction ratio of the input shaft to the output shaft about 1.8 to 1. Lower gear power ratio flow also with the gear shift lever with the drive position. Vehicle attains sufficient speed for transmission to shift the direct drive. Alright, figure 15 shows the power flow direction. Low band off, reverse clutch on, forward clutch off. Direct drive. The gear shaft of the lever is placed in the drive of the transmission lower gear until the vehicle reaches with the speed sufficient to allow the transmission automatically shift the direct drive. To shift the direct drive, release the low brake band applied with the direct clutch, locking the low sun gear to the input shaft of the reverse clutch remains released. Power flow with the drivetrain all is as follows from the input sun gear to lower long planetary pinions. Long planetary pinions to short planetary pinions. Because of the input of the low sum of the both locked and planetary pinions locked and unable to rotate, force the planetary gear carrier and attach output shaft to a 1-to-1 ratio of the input shaft. Figure 16 shows the low band off and the reverse clutch off and the forward clutch on. Reverse. When the gear shift lever is placed in reverse, the lower brake band and the direct clutch is released. The reverse clutch is applied, locking the internal gear of the planetary gear set with the power flow for the drivetrain is flow as follows. From the input sun gear to long planetary pinion with a short planetary pinion, walk around inside, locking internal gear, rotating planetary carrier, attach the output shaft, the output direction, input shaft, speed reduction ratio, input, output shift half, and properly 1.8 to 1. Simpson drivetrain. The arrangement combines the two multiple disc clutches, 2 brake bands, overrunning clutch, and 2 planetary gear sets operating on a common sun gear. The Simpson drivetrain is standard for virtually all 3-speed automatic transmission that are commonly produced. This shows a power flow, range geared, front clutch, rear clutch, kick down band, lower reverse band, and overrun clutch. Are your operations. Simpson drivetrain provides 3 4-speed reverse neutral power flows obtained with the above the chart with the following text. And then figure 18 shows the power flow neutrals. Engine input shaft, no output shaft, neutral. The gear shifter lever is played with the neutral clutch, direct bands relieve the input shaft, rotates the freely, no torque is transmitted to the output shaft. Drive low. The gear shift lever is placed in the drive of the automatic transmission with a low gear with the vehicle is in speed range 0 to approximately 8 miles an hour. Drive low. The rear clutch is engaged, locking the input shaft of the internal gear with the front planetary gear set. Power flow for the drivetrain is also from input shaft of the internal gear to the front planetary gear set, from internal gear pinions to the front planetary gear set. Because the front planetary gear is located and locked in the output shaft, the cannot rotate backwards, therefore acts reactionary. Remember the cover of the planetary pinions drive of the sun gear. Sun gear, which is common in both of the planetary gears, have the drive of the rear planetary pinions. Rear planetary gear was locked with the transmission caused haste by overrunning the clutch, serves as a reactionary. Remember, rear planetary pinions therefore drive the rear planetary internal gear, thus attach the output shaft with a speed ratio of 2.45 to 1. Drive second. The gear shaft levers drive of the vehicle is approximately 8 to 20 miles an hour. The transmission normally will be in second gear. Second gear rear clutch is applied with locking and input shaft with the internal gear over the front planetary gear set. Front brake band is engaged, locking the sun gear. Stationary power flow through the drivetrain is always as follows. From input shaft, the internal gear of the front planetary gear set. From internal gear to pinions from the front planetary set. Because the sun gear is locked with its axis as a reactionary member, these cover the planetary pinions to walk around and rotate the front of the planet carrier, drive the attach the output shaft. Our figure 9 shows the front clutch engage the input shaft at 180 degrees and the rear clutch engaging output shaft. Your direct drive. When the gear shaft of the lever is drive of the vehicle speed above approximately 25 miles an hour, the automatic transmission is normally in direct drive. Direct drive, both the front and rear clutches are applied, which is the ultimate result of the locking of the internal gear with the internal gear of the front planetary gear set. This result of the planetary gear being locked with the whole planetary gear set attached output shaft with rotating 1-to-1 speed ratio input shaft. Alright, when the gear shaft lever is played with the lower power flow through the drivetrain is identical to that of the drive load described above. The only difference is use of the rear brake band rather than overrunning clutch of the lock of the carrier of the rear planetary gear set. With the rear brake band prevented the elements from rotating either direction. The drivetrain is able to provide engine braking during the vehicle with acceleration with the transmission low, contrary to the drive low, and which allows the forward vehicle to freewheel during deceleration due to the one-way locking overrun clutch. Figure 20 shows the power flow and reverse the input shaft of 2 tenths to 1, 2.2 to 1. Input shaft front clutch engage overrunning clutch. In fact, output shaft lower reverse band applied. Reverse the gear shaft with the levers in reverse with the front clutch of the spring. Clutch is applied by locking the gear, and the input shaft of the rear brake band is applied by holding the carrier of the rear planetary gear stationary. Power flow through the drivetrain is followed with the input shaft of the sun gear from the sun gear of the rear planetary pinions. Go the rear planetary gear with the held stationary is active with the reactionary member of the rear planetary pinions. Therefore, drive the internal gear of the rear planetary gear set of the attached to the output shaft of the reverse rotation. Input shaft of the speed reduction ratio approximately 2.2 to 1. Alright, lesson 3. Describe hydraulic system of the automatic transmission. Hydraulic pressure for the hydraulic slave circuit of the actuator with the planetary holding devices, clutch, and brake bands. Hydraulic system control of the shifting pattern of the transmission done by the switching hydraulic pressure program combination planetary holding devices based on vehicle speed and engine load indicator. The hydraulic system circulates oil through the remote cooler, remove the excess heat that is generated in the transmission torque computer. Hydraulic system provides a constant fresh supply of oil to all circuit critical wearing surfaces of the transmission. This shows the typical hydraulic supply system. Supply system provides clean and pressure regulated supply oil. Hydraulic system automatic transmission. Automatic transmission use the combination engine driven pump that worked in the conjunction with the output shaft driven pump. The configuration no longer is used, therefore will not be covered. Operation construction typical system is described below. Typical transmission hydraulic pumps show the oil seal, the oil ring, the gasket, the oil pump body, the outer ring, inner ring, and reaction shaft support with the thrust washer and selective and seal rings and bolts. Hydraulic pump. The hydraulic pump is usually standard type of the external rotary type pump. Internal external gear type usually located with the front of the transmission case keyed with the torque converter's pump so that it is driven by the engine. Oil sump and filter. Oil sump usually in the form of a sheet panel plan attached to the bottom of the transmission case. Pump draws oil from the sump through the strainer. The strainer usually is made of paper or metal. Your regulator valve. The regulator valve controls the pressure of the hydraulic pumping of the hydraulic system. The transmission receiver the constant working pressure of the pressure supply. Receiver of the hydraulic system is called line pressure. The pump pressure is then fed hydraulic system through the spool valve that is then held with the right of the calibrated spring and the position spool closed at the port with the valve of the pump pressure to be fed right back to the pump suction line. All the pump pressure leaves the spool valve, the portion of the feedback on the end of the spool valve, the opposite of the spring. The pump pressure single attempts to move the spool again with the spring pressure. The drum pressure overcomes the spring pressure. The spool is pushed from the left and overcome the pump suction feed port. The pump of the pressure bled off through the port with the line pressure drop. Line pressure drops allows the spring to close the bleed port with the valve to turn, allow the pump pressure to build up again. From then on, regulation of the line pressure constant cycle between the pump and the spring pressure operating the spool valve. Are the value described above of the balance type spool valve? The balance type spools are very common in the transmission hydraulic system. Are your modulation regulator valve? The pump pressure rates passes the regulator valve to become the regulated line pressure. The operation, however, the automatic pressure, the need more than one set line pressure. They accomplish the additional signal with the fed. They regulate with the modulated line pressure. The single specific pressure following conditions or considerations are most common in modulation of the line pressure. Our normal condition regulator valve function of the line modulate the mode described in the previous paragraph. The normal line pressure is sufficient to operate the transmission shifting may move smooth and quietly. During periods of heavy acceleration, additional line pressure is required for the hold, the clutch, and the brake for the band tight enough to transmit the increased engine torque. Particularly important during the initial application of the elements during shifting changes, minimize slippage during the engagement, which would cover the burning and the premature wear of the friction fraction. Operation of reverse places of additional torque requirements from the clutch and brake band hold of the element of the planetary gear set. For this reason, the line pressure is increased at least twofold during the operation of reverse. In condition the cover to drop below the line pressure will cover the regulator valve temporarily cut off the oil supply with the torque converter. Common occurrence of the condition of the shifting of the reverse of temporary increase of the requirements placed on the pump while the engaging engine's idling of the pump to turn slowly. Modulation of the line pressure fairly simple manner with the pressure signal that are fed back to the regulating valve with the assistance of the spring with the result of the line pressure must increase they overcome the high pressure before the suction feedback port is uncovered. Feedback signals come from the manual valve of the throttle modulation system. This shows the converter feed circuit, a typical torque converted circuit. Your torque converter supply cooling lubrication that is all handled with the converter feed circuit with the hydraulic system integration logical one for the following reason. All phases of the cover circuit function approximately with the same operating pressure range. The majority of the heat generated by the transmission originates from the torque converter, but therefore logical for the oil that they circulate through the torque converter that should pass directly through to the cooler. The arrangement excessively isolated with the transmission from the major heat of the source of the major reason. Lubrication, transmission, cooling localized as well heat with the generated meaning of the moving part for the reason for the transmission lubrication is handled by oil after passing through the cooler. Or your oil supply. The supply of the oil with the converted feed circle because of the regulator valve. The regulator valve will cut off the supply. Oil supply with the line pressure drops below the operating minimum. Under normal conditions, circumstances, however, the oil pressure cut off with no more than less than 5 sigma will not affect the transmission operation during the period of the engine shutdown. The regulator valve also prevent the torque converter with draining back into the oil some of the condition. Otherwise, it would require the pump to refill the converter and each side of the engine restart with the checking, creating an unacceptable delay operation. Our regulating of the circuit oil pressure for the regulating valve supplies the converter feed circuit with the regulating line pressure for the converter feed circuit with the power with the required with the constant pressure independent transmission operating mode with generally lower than line pressure for the converter control valve control for the operation of the pressure for the converter feed circuit with the control valve with the balance type spool valve whose operating principles are much more like the regulator valve. The operating pressure is the low calibrated spring push of the spool on the left, the opening of the delivery port with the pressure reach for the delivery to the level. Desired level of the spool is then forced to the right, blocking the delivery port. The meter orifice is usually provided between the torque converter and the cooler controller volume of the oil from the oil system. Oil flow through the torque converter, oil through the converter is in most cases follows. Oil passes the converter control valve to the torque converter through the internal drill passage in the transmission case. Oil enters the torque converter through the clearance between the outside of the stator support and the inside of the converter hub. After the oil circulates with the converter, the exists with certain places between the input shaft and the inside of the stator support shaft. The oil then passes through the internal drill passage for the oil cooler outlet. The cooler and the heat exchange located remotely transmission the following are the most of the popular configurations. Most popular transmission cooler utility vehicles integral with the engine radiator of the cooler is basically a pipe with the extent of the entire length of the inside of the outlet tank of the radiator. The oil passes through the cooler within a portion of the layout, and the heat transfers to the engine. Coolant, the oil returns to the transmission. Should be noted that no mixing or the physical contact with the engine coolant in the transmission oil. In heavy duty, the separate oil and air type of the cooler is preferred because of the several uses. Enough heat generated with the transmission actually causes the engine to overheat with the transmission heat. It's transferred directly with the engine coolant, the oil, the air heat type. Heat exchange is built with the same as the automotive radiator. A concept with a continuous tube around arranged in rows of tubing passing through a series of fins. Also, oil passing for the tubing and latent heat with the transfer of the V with the air, V with the conduction through the fins. Top of the filled cooler usually located in the front of the engine radiator, whereas the subject of the air housing, airflow conditions important efficient operation. Alright, lubrication. After the oil is passed through the oil cooler, the pipe of the internal passage of the transmission cable of the rear section of the transmission provide with the lubrication and components of the planetary gear set output shaft of the often then drains back to the sump. At this time, it should be noted that the oils come. It also dissipates heat from the transmission. Oil is considered to be in the transmission cooling. Our range control system. The range control system provides the automatic operated control shifting of the transmission control with the following two indicators. Manual selection. The position of the gear shift located with the operator shows the desired shifting program. Selects available the operator typical 2-speed unit operation. Neutral is N is the engine free wheel for the no driving force on the vehicle. D is for drive, and D in drive. The transmission provides automatic shifting with the low and high gears ranges. Drive in low is locked in low range, and no automatic shifting occurs. Reverse to the direction of the engine torque drive wheels. Vehicle is driving backwards. P park is the same in the neutral, except the drive wheels are locked in positive latching devices in one tread and transmission. The 3-speed transmission has all above these sections selection plus drive seconds. Position all allows for automatic shift of the first and second gear. The block automatic shift from second to third gears. Vehicle speed versus engine load. Shifting automatic transmission control tube pressure for the signals with the indicator and speed. Engine load, and these signals work against each other to produce shifting sequences. Then shows the hydraulic schematic of the typical 3-speed automatic transmission. Or the center of all shifting control of the valve body with the unit through the hydraulic computer with the receiver of the information indicator described above. Based on the information of the valve body, switches the line pressure for the proper planetary holding element to produce the required gear range and information change with the variable valve body chamber the line pressure with the output, and accordingly with the for sake of the simplicity of the 2-speed with the transmission will be used to explain the operation of all typical components. All hypothetical automatic transmission hydraulic systems will be constructed in paragraph and must be struck with a hypothetical system by no means contains all the devices neutral necessary for the real transmission. Useful for the sake of the learning because it clearly illustrates how the decision and action shifting is initiated. The manual valve of the device selects the desired shift program through the position of the gear shifter level. The manual level is basically a multi-port spool valve that switch line pressure for the selected passage as moved through the operating positions. A governor modulates line pressure to produce the signal with indication of the vehicle speed. The signal is used with the valve body to formulate the rearranged selection of the transmission. Governor uses spool valve operated central figure operated weights. The weights are rotated with the output shaft of the transmission because it's solidly linked to the drive wheels, therefore consequently provides true indication of the vehicle speed. As the wave of the rotate, the act of the central figure force tends to pull them outward over the axis rotation. The weights are pulled inward and springs specifically calibrated springs allow the weights to move forward from a fully retracted, fully extended position with a desired output shaft speed range. Spool valve is in position while as all line pressure in the block and the governor weights are fully retracted. As the wave moves outward, when the spool valve gradually opens the line pressure port to governor pressure is port with the result of the approximately linear speed and governor pressure increases. Or the shift valve. The shift valve is a simple valence type spool valve that selects between low and high gear with the manual with this valve as the drive D drives position. The governor presses acts the spool valve with one direction, trying to push spool toward the high gear position. At the same time, the spring pressure modulated with the position with the accelerator pedal tries to push the spool towards the low gear position. The discussion is the decision of the shift valve is dependent on which the pressure for the greater the governor of the throttle. Shift valve is also contained with a device known as the throttle plug. The full throttle and the throttle plug makes the physical contact with the shift valve spool, forcing it into low gear position, forcing downward shift passing gear is initiated. Alright, the following subparagraphs describe the operation of the hypothetical hydraulic system with a two-speed automatic transmission. All of its models of operation reverse band rather than reverse clutch is used in the hypothetical transmission. When the shift lever is placed in neutral pressure for the locked and the manual valve, none of the friction elements are applied. When the shift lever is placed in the low manual valve, drive line pressure directly to the low band compound planetary gears train, then in the low gear. Gear shaft placed in the reverse delivered the line pressure directly to the reverse band compound planetary gear rather than low gear. When gear shift placed in the G drive, the manual valve delivers the line pressure directly to the low band and the governor. If the vehicle is not moving, the governor does not supply the pressure to the shift valve, but the complementary planetary gear train remains in the low gear. Alright, the vehicle begins with the move of the gear shift to the lever for the drive of the transmission low gear, providing the engine with the necessary mechanical advantage to accelerate the vehicle. The speed of the vehicle speed to increase with the governor pressure rises proportionally to the vehicle speed reach of the point with the governor pressure for the one side of the shifting valve with the cause and overcome the throttle spring pressure other side of the shift valve spool. The spool moves to direct the high gear position with the spool valve move with the shift valve at the beginning with the delivery of the line pressure applied with the direct clutch, releasing the low band that can be released while it's 100% applied pressure, usually a double acting servo. Double acting servo can be released by applying pressure under the piston. Diameters of the piston and bore double acting servo steps in and servo the pressure under the piston with a great surface, therefore overcome the applied pressure. Application of the driver clutch, release of the lower band plate for the compound planetary gear train, high gear direct drive, the pressure exerted with the throttle spring against the shift valve spool, increase the proportionally to the acceleration is deprived of the terminal proportionally rate of the vehicle speed, automatic upshift occur. In this situation, arrive at the quick acceleration need, operator initiate the force downshift by pushing the accelerator to the floor. Action cover the throttle plug to contact with the shift valve, with forcing it to the low gear position, actuating cut off line pressure to direct clutch and release the speed of low band servo causing the direct clutch. Release the low band, apply this to the place of the compound planetary gear train and low gear. Our auxiliary devices, the hydraulic system, hypothetical hydraulic system mentioned above with a good learning tool. However, there is actual function may be many more devices necessary. The following devices necessary in addition to the basic operation of the hydraulic system. The device is called accumulators, connect with the pressure supply line selected as planetary gear set holding elements. Accumulator in spring-loaded position cause the line pressure to build gradually while the element is applied. This gives the cushion effect of the application to a smoother shifting and transmission. Valves are installed to prevent transmission from being shifted in reverse direction, forward movement, and to prevent forward downshift at predetermined speed. A modulator is used to automatic transmission and replace the throttle linkage. The modulator is a diaphragm device that uses the engine manifold vacuum to indicate the load of the shifting valve. Practice exercise. Answers to practice exercise. Lesson 5, Fundamentals of the Transfer Case. Testing.